Geektastic and Rick. So big round of applause for the last demo of the evening, please.
Thank you. So my name's Rick. I'm co-founder and chief exec of Geektastic. So just to give you a bit of context as how we got to sort of come up with this crazy idea. I've run startups, I've worked at big corporates, always hiring technical people. I'm not a developer myself, but I have hired lots of them. It's always a pain in the neck. The amount of time we spend getting CVs from recruiters, looking through CVs, filtering through the process, issuing technical challenges because you can't tell how good a coder is from their CV. We then spend a lot of time, we miss sprints because the engineers in the team are evaluating the coders coming in for the candidates. The whole thing seems like a real mess. So we went out to recruitment companies and says, why don't you evaluate the candidates before they come to us? And their view was, well, that's your job, you're hiring them, you should work out how good they are. So we exited the last business in February last year. I sat down with our CTO and said, what was the biggest challenge we had at Bonds of the last business? And it was hiring techies, and how could we try and simplify and speed up that process? Can we provide a toolkit for people who are hiring, either recruiters or to in-house tech teams, that will enable them to use us to help that screening process? So we created Geektastic, and the concept of Geektastic is to provide a community-based tech screening platform. So there are plenty of companies out there who do tech screening, but they use a machine to evaluate the candidate. What we wanted to do is use real people to evaluate that. Obviously, that's a challenge because it's not scalable. Machines are very scalable. Human beings aren't. But there are tons of people out there who can help do this. So the idea is that you, as a hirer, come into Geektastic and you license one of our challenges. So you basically come in here, you can either create your own challenge. So you create a challenge that you might use internally, and you can then create this on the platform. I won't go through this because it'll take ages. Or you can then just license one of ours. So we've created a whole series of technical challenges in individual programming languages. So if you're hiring a data scientist or you're hiring a JavaScript engineer, we hope that we've got things to suit. Once you've got it, you then create a hiring campaign. So we've got a whole load of ones here. So I come on the platform, so I'm either in-house HR or I'm a dev manager, and this suits everybody from small startups to big corporates. And I create a hiring campaign. So I won't, again, go through all of that now. But once the campaign's created, I then add candidates to the campaign. So I add a candidate here. So the candidate comes in from a recruiter. You then put the candidate's email address in here. You've already attached to the challenge they're going to get. They add the candidate, and then you invite the candidate to take part in a challenge. The candidate will receive an email. They take the coding challenge. That comes back into our system, and we then have our Uber geeks who are distributed globally around the world, and they will then review the code challenge and then submit the results back into the system. And the idea is that as a hiring manager, I get a proper in-depth review of the candidate, as opposed to a score being spat out saying they got 67%. So the other side of this is we have, obviously, to recruit lots of developers who are going to help review our code challenges. So as a developer, we are trying to grow that community. And that's the challenge I've got now, is how do we balance this two-sided marketplace, where we've got hirers who are going to use the platform, but we also need to build up the community of developers who are going to do the code reviews. That's it. So my question is, how do I grow it? How do I grow the community? Sorry? Sure. So in this case here, I've licensed all the challenges there are, but normally there'll be a list down here of the challenges that I can license.
Hi there.
Hi.
Have you used this yourself to hire anybody?
Have I used this platform to hire anybody? No,
Yeah.
we're only 3 people, so.
Okay. Do you think you would?
Yes, definitely.
Code reviews can be very different depending on who does them, I would say. Do you not think it would be very hard to balance the different people that are doing your code reviews? Do you not think people will be, might say, a certain style might be better than another style?
Yep. So our sort of objective is not to say whether this is a pass or a fail. It's to have very experienced senior guys comment on other people's code. Where we want to get to is we've got 3 people reviewing each candidate. So you then got effectively a peer review system where you've got 3 people's comments in the code. The idea is to provide the same level of input that you would get from your internal team. And you're right, everybody's different, but the idea is that you can avoid your internal teams taking loads of time doing code reviews and get other people to do it.
So I'm an engineer, and I've interviewed for these sorts of roles quite a lot, and I think it is a really tough challenge. But one of the problems you're going to have is that you need smart engineers on the platform.
Yep.
To try and stop smart engineers at your company in reviewing other people's code. So what's the incentive for someone who is very good at what they do to go on here and review other people's code?
Right.
For presumably not making much money doing it,
so
if at all.
I forgot a little bit.
Okay.
So we pay all of the engineers who are on our platform. They have to pass the code challenge and do 3 code reviews to even become part of the Uber Geek team. And they all get paid to do the code review. So they earn £25 for each code review they do. They also earn, if one of their challenges they publish on the platform gets licensed, then they get paid for that as well.
Okay. Do you have a concern that the challenges have become too standardized, so you, as a candidate, you would get the same one from like 10 different companies?
So that was a problem we thought we'd have at the start. And certainly a lot of these are sort of machine-based platforms, all the challenges get burnt too quickly. We'll get our guys to be constantly creating new challenges and new variants, so that a challenge, as soon as it's been out there for a month, will get burnt and get replaced by another one.
I'm a software engineer myself, and I've gone through a lot of challenges, and it gets tiring. By the end, you know?
Sure.
It's not possible to have, instead of creating a new campaign, have the future employer look at what has been done in the past.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we want to get to in the end. The end game of this is that engineers don't have to do 10 challenges to go for 10 roles. That you can go into the system, and as long as that candidate's already been here and been assessed, you can look at their previous code challenges, as long as it's been done within a certain time frame.
Have you looked at intrinsic motivation for the reviewers? Because my concern is that you're providing an amount of money which is enough to motivate somebody to game the system, but not enough to motivate somebody to come along and because they're truly talented and they're getting a real true value for their time. And I think the problem is you're going to get quite a lot of sort of spammy reviews that are kind of just enough information to pass the bar, but not really expert. I think the biggest problem you're going to have is actually monitoring the quality of the reviewers, not monitoring the quality of the candidates.
Yeah, I totally agree. So
So just a couple of ideas that you could use to get around that. So firstly, what you could do is you could initially allow people to build up grading by grading other people's code.
Yep.
So you have a kind of like a sort of self-sustainable, like a one-sided marketplace in the review.
Yep.
The other thing is you can, I think there's probably a lot of opportunity to scale automated tools within this. I don't think it's either commented or automated. I think potentially having a hybridization of this would be a good idea.
So to incorporate some level of automated testing early on.
Yeah, and the other thing is I think that you're missing a trick as well by only offering this in a recruitment context, because I think actually perhaps the most powerful opportunity for this is blind review of deployed code, not tests. Like my instant instinct is that if I've got something I'm going to go and deploy to a live site, why would I not spend £75 having 3 reviewers try and bug test this? And that's going to put many, many, many more lines of code through your system than would be the case for a recruitment use case.
Never thought of that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Silence.
Any more? Any general feedback? Sorry, I'm retired people. General feedback, thoughts?
Would you, if you were hired, would you trust assist? Because one thing I've got to try and build up is credibility here. how do we prove that the reviews are as good as we know they are? Because I know they're good, but how do I prove this to people?
Well, I think I've got another question from sort of my perspective, which is I don't have a tech background. We're in a startup. We need to hire someone who does. Actually, going into that, I wouldn't even know where to start with what kind of code do they need to know in order to help me with my problem. And so how do you, there's an opportunity there for people who actually really need this kind of service because they don't even know where to start, to come into it and take them through that process a little bit more gently to kind of ease me into it. Because actually we were having this conversation earlier today with Sarah, who presented earlier, who was like, well, actually, I could get my husband to help you assess someone because we've got a guy who we actually need to solve this problem with now. Yeah. And I thought, okay, this looks great. But then you say to me, okay, well, then you need to test them with this and with that and with the other. Yeah. And I don't know how to trust your reviewers. I think having a few different people giving you that assessment would be really useful. Yeah. So having 3 is always better than having one person providing that assessment. Yeah. Definitely would make me feel more confident. Mm-hmm. But just that, how do I even know where to start from is where I'd be kind of coming from as well.
Okay, so this is almost we're assuming a lot.
You've made an assumption. And actually there's a lot of people in my position who are in smaller organisations who go, we need someone to come on, to do this, to come on board. Where do I start? Okay.
Pay extra for it.
And I'd pay extra for it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
And so would he, because
I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but all the startups are great. What's interesting is she pointed out something quite interesting, right? You are non-technical. And there's a lot of assumptions on this, right? So that talks about the market that you approach. If you're approaching smaller companies that don't have dedicated teams for this, then there needs to be a lot of hand-holding. Mm-hmm. And that means the product needs to develop a lot more for it to be a lot easier to onboard and to explain things. So I would imagine if you're going to go with this, go for the bigger guys immediately. It's a longer sales cycle, but it's less development.
Yes. For us, we're trying to identify the people who've got the absolute need. And the need at the moment, what this suits is somebody who can't... We spoke to somebody, they're sitting on 6,000 CVs. And it takes them 90 days to get to even do the first round of interviews, just because they haven't got enough people to process this. So I think, people who identified the key problem, which is the pain point of being able to get through the reviewing.
Any more?
Sorry, I have another one. I think we spent months and months interviewing people. I mean, I must have spoken to sort of 60 people to get one person in. Yep. And the thing that's really difficult about it is it's really subtle. Like the difference between a good person and a bad person is the tiniest of things. It's like if 3 people interview someone, you'll spend an hour arguing about the person you spoke about and that you interviewed and why they were better and why they were worse. Yep. And it seems to be really difficult to capture that in something like this. So what is it, if I was a hirer or whatever, what do I see when someone's gone through a challenge, when I see 5 people have reviewed it or something?
So here's one I did earlier. So this is quite geeky. But obviously this is, this isn't the best example. We tend to have some bullet points at the top. So what you would see is, if I come into one of these guys, actually let's have a look here. Somebody who did a very good valuation. So here. So I would have a look at the results. So we give sort of evaluation comments at the top, which is like a high-level view, and then we score them on certain things, readability of the code, did they do comments, did they do tests, and then there's also a line-by-line code review. So we're actually going through the code. And we don't want to be the ones that say whether you should hire this person or not, because it's all very subjective. What we're trying to do is arm you with the next stage in the process, which is to talk to the engineer about this is really strange, how come you did this? Or this is nuts, this is a really weird approach, and get them to talk through it. So it's just providing the ammunition for the next stage in the process rather than saying, this is the best guy, you should definitely hire him.
That makes sense. I think I would use this more to just be a place where I can issue a challenge and see the solution right on the screen, and then we can chat about it. Because if I see someone else's comments about someone's code, I'll probably just disregard them, because if I had to read the code anyway, I'm going to know what the challenge is and I'm going to know what the solution should be.
Sure.
So I'm probably not going to look too much at what other people are saying and think about what I think.
Yeah.
If I have to read the code line by line anyway.
Yeah. And I think it depends. We've tried to make this cater for all different sorts. This could just be managed by an HR manager who says, right, I want to screen 20 people and I want to get the top 5, and then those top 5 then go through to the engineering team. But if people are more hands-on, then probably just create because you can administer this all yourself within the system. So you can just create your own challenge and use it as an admin tool.
Sorry, I just sneezed at the point where I was going to say, thank you very much. That's amazing. That's all we've got time for.